Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. We haven't done a Q&A session in a while, so that's what we're gonna do today. We ran a questionnaire out on our YouTube channel and also one out on Instagram and have quite a few questions, so we're going to go through some of those and answer them. If you like this Q&A session, please click that subscribe button. We really appreciate it. Okay, here's one from 5 days ago. Hey Jason, grateful fan here. I have a question on a summer project. I'm planning a rectangular deck that will be secured to masonry walls on 3 sides, but one of the longer walls is not parallel to the other one. The wall spreads out at a slight angle. How should I compensate for this angle when fastening the joists? I was thinking on trimming the edge of the joist at the same angle so it lays flush against the face of the ledger. Can I slightly bend the joist hangers to keep the joist flat against the ledger? Should I leave a small angled gap between the joist and the ledger? Or add a shim or wedge compensating the angle and make sure that the make sure to fasten the hanger through that wedge into the ledger. Big admirer of your work. Have learned a lot from your channel. Well, thank you for that question. Let's address these as asked. If you have a slight angle, if it's more than like 2 degrees, then I would bevel the boards to fit the ledger board. If it's only 2 degrees, I don't know if it's gonna matter, but I would make them snug as possible up against the ledger. So usually I'm cutting that bevel. If you just grade all your framing and then lay them all out and just make all the cuts at once, that's the quickest way to do it. I wouldn't do one joist, hang the joist, go back down, cut another joist, hang that joist. I would do it all subsequently. So I would just cut out everything I need to cut at that angle, unless you're specific to different angles every time. And then I would measure every joist bay, every joist length, and I would cut accordingly. You don't want them too tight because then your joists are gonna twist or bow like this. So I would cut them like a 1/16 long so you can get a really super tight fit. But if you end up being a little too short, the joist hanger will hold it up and you're still gonna get your positive attachment through the side fastening through the joist hanger. So make sure you're using a 2.5-inch SD screw or a 3-inch Tico style nail, something that's rated for joist hangers. That's the Simpson code. So when you're attaching the joist hanger to the ledger, you can use 1.5 inches or longer if you can. If you're on a masonry wall, you don't want to do that. You want to use 1.5 inches. My suggestion was, if you're on a masonry wall and you only have 1.5 inches attached to it, and then you're hitting the concrete or the brick, then I would use a 2.5-inch Simpson SD screw to go through the side holes of your joist hanger. There's 4 of them usually. Even on a 2x6, a 2x8, or a 2x10 hanger, I think there's just 4 screws that go for dual shear attachment, which means it's gonna go through the joist and into the ledger. But make sure you're using the proper length fastener to attach it to the ledger board. Should I leave a small angled gap between the joist or add a shim or wedge? You know, I wouldn't add any shims or wedges if you can avoid it. Then you're compromising part of the shear attachment from the joist hanger through the joist and into the wall. I would definitely cut all those. If your joist is coming in like this and it's square on this end and it's beveled, I would cut whatever bevel that is to make sure it fits snug to the ledger. Hope that answered your question. What temperature do you stop laying PVC decking? What is your ideal temp to cut in at a frame for PVC? What is your target max length PVC to ensure limited growth in the sun? I like to use full length PVC boards. So if that's 10 feet, 20 feet, 15, 16 feet, whatever it is, I usually build in patterns. My trick is I never cut a line in the hottest part of the day. I wait till the coolest part of the morning to make all my cuts. So even if I finish laying decking at 2 p.m., I could cut one side of a pattern, but I will not cut the other side until everything is cool, because things are gonna expand and contract, especially with PVC. So if it's 3 p.m. and it's 80 degrees out, the PVC is gonna be maxed, and you're in direct sun, the PVC is gonna be maxed out for length, for heat. But in the morning when it's 65 degrees or 60 degrees, it's gonna shrink a little bit. So if I cut that board when it's hot and I have exactly what I need for width, it's gonna shrink in the morning, and then I'm gonna have big gaps in between. Trust me, I've done it before and I've regretted it, because then you just have a larger gap than the rest of your deck. So my advice is always cut in the morning when it's cool, and just make appropriations for that. Just first thing in the morning, be disciplined, like have everything ready to go. Have all your tools ready and near. So if it's the last thing you put away for the day, grab that stuff, get it out on the deck, make those cuts by 9 a.m. And I've never had a problem with that. Who cares if they grow a little bit, because you know that they're gonna shrink back up in the morning and you'll keep those consistent gaps. Any special books or other resources that helped you gain knowledge to master your craft? There are books out there. A lot of this, some of the stuff we do is pretty specific, and there's no books on deckboard bending or how to build a curved staircase. I did learn a little bit about curved staircase layout online. If you Google spiral staircase calculator, you can input some measurements and some projections, and you can change the way that the curve that you have if you're going for a specific set of curves or a specific radius or that kind of thing. There will be some options that you can input into the calculator that will help you design the size of staircase you need. Just observe the local building codes when you're doing that. But as far as books go, the one I think I've read that I thought, hey, this one's not bad, is one that Black & Decker put out. And I think I have a copy of it, but I don't know where it is. And if you just type in, let's say Google Black & Decker deck book, it should pull up. And there's a lot of great information in there about how to build decks and basic information. And there's also some advanced techniques as well. So that would be a good one to look at. There's a couple other books online that I've seen that are pretty good. And then also, if you go to social media, YouTube is a great instructor. It's not always the correct way to install things. So be careful, just trust the source, the page that you're going to. And also just maybe social media can be good as well, like Instagram. I put out a lot of information on YouTube and Instagram, and it's the way I do things. I've had people say, hey, I don't agree with this. I'm like, okay, well, where you're from, this might not be allowed. But where I'm from, it is. And I can say that with confidence because I went through the building department and permitted this project, and it was engineered, and the building department stamped it and approved it for my engineer's stamp. So not only do I have the city's approval, I have the engineer's approval, and most importantly, I have my approval. So just some heads up for you on that. Different options for railing posts, their installations, and what the codes are. I want to mount my 4x4s on the exterior of the deck next week, so could you please hurry? Studio man, this guy needs his information next week. I did find some Simpson DTT2Z tension brackets. Different options for railing posts. Well, okay, so here you go. It's very rare that I use a 4x4 post. The last build that we just finished, I did do that though. I did use 4x4 posts. Now I used Fasten Master timber locks, and I box framed the post into the deck, on the inside of the deck, and I had solid attachments at least in 2 locations on every single post, if not 4 locations. They also make a through bolt. I don't remember what it's, I think it's called a through lock, that you can go through the ledger, through the post, and there's a big washer on the back side that tightens everything together. So through locks are kind of cool. I personally never use those because I don't do a lot of through bolting on 4x4 posts. A lot of guys on the East Coast do that. Some guys on the West Coast do that. I'm kind of like more modern with my railings, so I use a lot of Regal ideas. My favorite way to mount a post is surface mount. We do our crystal rails surface mounted. We do all of our aluminum and glass rails surface mounted. We don't do a lot of fascia mounts, but fascia mount is okay too. So if you're going to fascia mount 4x4s, my recommendation is don't notch the posts and do some kind of heavy duty fastener. If you're gonna mount to a ledger, don't just mount to the ledger. Put a 4x block behind the ledger board and then use a long leg, like I would use 5 or 6 inch, you could use 6-inch timber locks, you could use 6-inch Versalocks by Fasten Master. Those will work very well. It depends if you're going for finish. If you have nice posts and you're gonna like pre-drill all the holes and flush mount all the hardware, or are you gonna sleeve over the top of those posts with some kind of a composite sleeve or something like that? It just really depends on what you're doing. So my recommendation is I do a lot of aftermarket aluminum systems. It's very low maintenance, really strong, and all you need is 4 fasteners through the top of the decking and into a solid block, either into a joist or into solid blocking. Usually we use 4x6. We use a 3 5/8 fasten master ledger lock to lock it down, a flathead. Never had any issues with that. I am trying to find your video about what bracing you use to hang your stair jacks or stringers. Could you point me to the right direction, please? Funny you asked that. We just completed shooting a video about attaching staircases to the deck. We have 2 versions in that video, 2 different ways on the same project. We had one way where we attached right to the beam and another way where we hung our own bracing and attached that way and added some Simpson steel to it. Can you over-engineer a deck? Well, to be honest, most our decks are over-engineered, because for my engineer to stamp and put his name on something, he's going to over-engineer it, which means he's going to make sure that all the math not only passes the bare minimum of what the structure needs to support itself, he's also going to give it a 25% overload value, which basically he's over-engineering the deck, because on certain glue lambs and spans, we've been pretty tight on some of our allowances because we're spanning 37 feet in between posts or something like that. But for the most part, most joist systems and that kind of thing, it's more than adequate for when my engineer approves something. So yes, you can over-engineer a deck. Is it okay? I think so, unless it's just redundant. Like if you're gonna put 2x12 joists, 6 inches on center with a 3 foot in between beams, I think that would have held the Taj Mahal. It really does depend on your structure. If you don't know anything about deck structure or loading of decks or how many footings to use or any of that kind of stuff, then do some research, or your best option is talk to your local structural engineer. They know the soil type that you're gonna be working in. They know the frost depth levels that you need to go down to, and it's all math. So that's your YouTube stuff. I have several questions from Instagram, so now we'll go through some of those. First Instagram question, guys. How do you estimate the materials used on the stairs you just made? There's not a computer program that I own that will tell me I need 28 2x8s, 20 foot long, that I'm gonna cut up into these lengths to make the stairs. It's all completely custom. So I personally figure out the supply list. Now on the project we just finished, we were there for 9 weeks, and I had 3 material drops because we did a front entry, which was one project. We did the back deck and staircase, which is like 2 different projects in the same rate. So it's kind of like we did 3 different projects at the same time, at the same residence. So for the staircase, I basically figured out how many rises I needed, and then I decided, okay, I have 14 rises. I need a front and a back plate for each box I'm gonna build. So I figured 5 feet, but then I ended up making them 6 feet. So I was short supplies right off the bat once I decided to widen the staircase. It just worked out better for the layout and for how the rails were gonna come up and match into the existing posts. Before I was gonna have a separate post for the top rail on the left, and then I decided, no, that's convoluted. I want this to be as seamless as possible. So I'm gonna dump it right into the vertical post, which meant I actually had to add an extra foot to the staircase. Come to think of it, I didn't even charge the clients for. But it is what it is. So instead of getting 4 outside rim joists for my stairs, I only got 3. I was short some materials right off the get-go. But that's what I did. I figured out, okay, I need 5 feet here, 5 feet here, and then I need 5 or 6 joists to go in each box. And the inside one's at 11 inches, so I just computed 12 inches, and the outside one's 16 and a half. So I just figured 1.5 feet per joist times 5. So I need 7.5 feet. So I just figured 10 feet so I always over order. So I needed 10 feet for the internals. I needed 10 feet for the externals. So I figured I needed one 20-foot board 2x8, one 20-foot 2x8 for each rise times 14. So I needed 14. So I'm just gonna round up, and then I ended up ordering 20. And then I'm glad I did, because I have 2 left over that are pretty twisted now because they've been sitting out in the sun. But it gave me enough supply. I would rather have too many supplies than not enough, but not so many that it's like, hey, we got a huge haul off day because I way over ordered materials. We have 1 extra deck board, 1 extra multi-width board, and 2 extra framing boards, and a few extra 4x6s left on the job site, and that's it. For a 2-month project, it's pretty good. That's how I estimated those materials. Do you prefer working in the heat or the cold? Personally, I'd rather work in the heat because I can feel my fingers and my toes. When it's cold enough, you can't feel your fingers or your toes, it's miserable. So I much prefer to work in the heat. Plus it doesn't get super hot here, but it does get hot. It can get 90 to 100 degrees with 70% humidity. It's not Florida, but it gets pretty warm. So it can be miserable as well. Do you ever get bored and want a more challenging project? Not usually. There's some kind of a challenge on every job, even if it's a square deck. But I usually, like on this project, I was able to throw this curved staircase in. That kept me fully challenged and fully engaged for the entire time I was building it. I don't know if I could handle just jumping off of this one and going straight into another one. It's nice to take a little bit of a break and be able to coast for a little bit before you get into the next challenge, but we're jumping in from this deck into another large project that's gonna have its challenges as well. So my job keeps me pretty engaged. All right, guys. So there are some answers to some of your questions. Thank you for watching this video. If you learned a little something, maybe one or two things off of this video, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when we're putting out new content. Also, don't forget to leave a comment below and like this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.